The land down under has never been easier to reach. United Airlines has more flights between the U.S. and Australia than any other U.S. airline, so you can fly nonstop to destinations like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Explore dazzling cities, savor the very best of Aussie cuisine, and get up close and personal with the wildlife. Who doesn't want to hold a koala? Go to united.com/Australia to book your adventure.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to be talking about all the people that drink like every day or nearly every day and say that it really just doesn't impact them. It's just a cool way to relax and, really no downside at all. Like, yeah, right. So we'll talk about that today. And before we do, please do subscribe. My most recent out of my 90 subscriber episodes is Should Everyone Go to Therapy? And despite what my job is, I do not think so. But you will listen and learn and benefit greatly from knowing whether you fit into one of my categories of people that should, which isn't just everybody again. So, and certainly not every child. And I talk about that too. And children, adults, couples, whatever. So anyway, does drinking just not really impact you? Are you as healthy as you could be despite having 1 or 2 drinks every night? And of course, more on the weekends. No, stop. Get out of that delusion. Because seriously, have you ever tried to stop drinking for a month and felt 10,000 zillion times better, but then somebody had a party or there was an event or whatever, and you just started again? I mean, every single person that stops drinking feels better. Why? Alcohol's a depressant, particularly after about your 30s. You're fucking depressed enough. Let's be real. Life is tough. You got children. You got to keep a game face on for them. You're probably having some level of marital issues if you're listening to my podcast. You probably grew up in a dysfunctional home if you're listening to my podcast. Shit is hard. Do you really need to make shit harder for yourself? It is literally a depressant to your system, as well as calories for no reason, and you feel hungover in the morning. I don't care. I don't care what you say. That one drink doesn't make you feel hungover. Try not drinking for 1 to 2 weeks, and why don't you see how much clearer you feel? Because literally everybody that tries this says that they do. Now, even if you don't give a shit about your health or your job or your functioning at your job or your parenting or being overweight, because alcohol can lead to that, or any of those things, what do you care about? If you're listening to the Dr. Psych Mom Show, you do care about your parenting. So, that's a bigger fish to fry. But everybody who's listening cares about their relationship. And your relationship really does not benefit, and in fact is massively, frequently, very significantly hurt by drinking. Especially the kind of drinking that I'm talking about where it's not every so often we drink, where it's nightly drinking with more on the weekends. And don't get on your high horse if it's just nightly drinking without more on the weekends. It's still nightly drinking. So it's relevant to you. So what happens to couples? Well, it depends whether they are more conflict avoidant and not in a good way, not just happy, but whether they sweep conflict under the rug or whether they are fighters, and they argue a lot. If they argue a lot, well, let's just take one little guess about when they come in couples counseling, people be like, oh, I had a terrible fight on Friday. And I just don't want to be total, bitch. So I'm not oh, because y'all drank? Sometimes I will. If we know that that's an issue, I'll be like, oh, did you drink? They'll be like, yeah. Invariably, they'll say, yeah, if they drink, then the drinking makes the fight worse, and then couples that haven't even thought about this, it's they got to come in a few times and they had pretty good week or an all right week or something. And then this is my favorite line. They'll be like, yeah, it was because we drank, but you know what? The issues were there anyway. You know what? Let me tell you, the issues are going to be there anyway. There is never a couple that goes to couples counseling. They're like, oh my God, we resolved every single issue. Not only all the past ones, but all the future ones. We are just literally never going to have an issue anymore. That I check back in 5 years and they're like, yep, damn straight. Didn't have a single issue. Of course you're going to have issues. You're two people, right? That have individual lives and preferences and wants and desires and stressors and backgrounds. And you're going to have issues. So it's it counts that you drank. Your drinking likely made that fight happen when it wasn't going to happen. happen. And it isn't better. Nobody's ever like, man, we feel so much better after we had that drunken fight. We were both on our A game. We were super logical. We were very empathic. We really finally heard each other for the first time. No way. People end up saying crazy shit. Like, and then he threatened to leave, and then I threatened to leave, and then we thought that we heard the kids wake up, but then we convinced ourselves we didn't because that would be too shame-inducing. And then, I took his phone, then he took my phone, and then I told him that, he was an asshole. He told me I was an asshole. Like, what? Y'all are paying for couples counseling. Come and have the damn session. When you're both sober, I would never do a couples counseling session when people were drunk because they can't think straight. So how can you tell yourself that any fight that you have when you're drinking is anything except making the relationship 1,000 times worse? You're both ashamed afterwards. Then you're hungover the next day, likelier to be irritable and get into another fight. Even if you're not totally hungover because, you only in quotes, had 1 or 2 drinks, you're still fuzzy and your irritability is going to be up and your bandwidth is going to be down. I'm telling you, like 30% of marital issues, I bet, could be solved by just the people stopping drinking or stopping drinking, except when they go on their every other week date night or something, they have 2 glasses of wine, right? If women should not drink basically in the second half of their cycle, if they have marital conflict or possibly at all, but, definitely not, because it makes you more depressed. If you are drinking the day before your period, holy shit, you are going to be in 1,000 times worse of a mood. And I give you 100% that you're going to have a fight with your husband. And if a guy has any anger problems and he's drinking, no, it doesn't help you relax. It makes you more reactive. It makes you quicker trigger. Unless you drink to the point that you pass out. And then what kind of life are you living? And obviously, what kind of example are you setting to your children? The parenting is another issue. There's a lot of people who barely ever interact with their kids fully sober because by the time the kids come home from school and aftercare and all that, it's basically an hour or 2 until you have your nightly glass of wine, if that. So then you're not really fully present. You don't fully know what's going on. Now, some people will say, but I can't relax without the alcohol. Well, does that sound good? Does that sound like something to ignore? Not to me. That sounds like a real, like a substance use problem waiting to happen. And I will bet anything that drinking, quote, to relax was normalized in your family of origin, but that you deeply wish that your parents hadn't been half drunk all the time. If you've allowed yourself to think about it at all. So when you say to yourself, I cannot relax without alcohol, that is a wonderful reason to get into therapy and figure out alternate coping strategies. It would honestly even be better to be on something like, antidepressant, where you have like the same kind of dose every day and it's not a depressant, because alcohol is a depressant. So it's short-term anxiety reduction. Long-term, the anxiety and depression gets worse. So it would be better if you're really somebody that needs some sort of biological help with anxiety. Probably you would talk to a provider, certainly, but an antidepressant would be smarter in most cases. All cases, I'd say, then nightly dependent drinking, dependent because you cannot regulate your mood without it. And you're also, of course, teaching your children that alcohol is a mood regulator. And that is a terrible lesson, and you have no idea the genetic predisposition of your children toward addiction. And so it is always better for them to see drinking as something mommy and daddy do sometimes because they're grown-ups, then literally as soon as we walk in the door, it is extremely tense until daddy makes a drink. Then when he sits down after about a half an hour, I can come play with him. And then an hour after that, I really don't try to know anything about where daddy is because he can be volatile. And that is the life of a lot of kids. And if you're an adult child of an alcoholic, you know that. So when a parent uses substances, it is never the same all the time. And if it is, it's not a good same all the time. So even the people that are kind of quiet when they're drinking, they're not fully there, and their kids know that. So it's really something to think about, And the more uncomfortable or offended you get by the idea that your nightly drink or 2 could be bad, the more you should interrogate it. Because if there was a pill that if you had to take Valium every day, you would probably say, man, I got to get in control of my life. Something's wrong. Something is wrong with how I'm coping. Something is wrong with the setup of my life. Something is making me so anxious that I have to take this pharmaceutical in order to calm down. This is not a sustainable situation. But just because like wine sounds, gourmet and it's not a pharmaceutical doesn't mean it's not a pharmaceutical. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. So you're taking a substance to make you feel different and to be less present in the world that you're in. This sounds to me like a wonderful reason to go to therapy, to figure out how to fully be present. And it's really no different when now that marijuana has been legalized, if you have to smoke every day. Or anything else where you feel like you have to. At the very least, of course, I know there's medical marijuana, certainly helps some people with anxiety, etc. At the very least, be talking to a doctor, because I have seen the case where people start having an edible or something regularly for anxiety, and it goes up and up and up. And, that's not good. That's really not good. And the benefit of pharmaceuticals, which, like psychotropics, like SSRIs, although they certainly have many downsides, including side effects, the benefit is that like your doctor doesn't say, hey, you know what, just like take as many as you need. Like if you're having a bad day, just have like 7 Zoloft, capsules. That's cool. But people tend to do that more with things like edibles or drinks or anything like that. So you're really kind of not in control. And then for many people, they wake up in a year and they're like, oh my God, how did I get to be somebody who has basically 3 drinks a night every night? How did that happen? Just last year, I remember I had dry January or whatever. Well, shit, it's next January, and I'm somebody who has 3 glasses of wine a night to relax. And that's kind of not what I want to show my kids. I have a temper after a certain point. I am fuzzy. I kind of don't remember what I do really well after 7. I'm a little anxious to answer work emails if they come in. I'm a little anxious to answer texts. I kind of, I don't feel like myself. And I pass out quickly at night, don't get to hang out with my spouse, fall asleep in my kid's bed, whatever the case may be, because I'm not fully there. And of course, goes without saying that exercise and other health initiatives generally, don't happen as much when somebody is drinking a lot or drinking regularly, constantly, because again, you wake up and you're fuzzy. And that's a real thing and a real effect of drinking. So anyway, if this spoke to you, it would be definitely something to bring up with a spouse, do you think that I drink too much? And they may say something that surprises you. Or a lot of times, honestly, they'll say, well, yeah, but I still want to drink. Well, what does that mean? I mean, that's kind of more common than you would think. And what it means is, hell yeah, you do. But I self-regulate with alcohol, and I certainly do not want to examine my own behavior. So allowing you to be basically kind of, drunk every night is allowing me to do the same. And possibly even I drink a little less than you. So it makes me feel better about myself. Of course, they're not articulating any of this. I'm just describing how it goes. And this is why couples frequently get stressed when one stops drinking. But that doesn't mean couples also get stressed when one person stops being depressed. This doesn't mean that you should stop working on yourself because it stresses the relationship. It means that you need to interrogate the relationship more because any dynamic change is going to stress it. And long term, it will be a net positive for either person to improve in any mental or physical health domain. But the other person needs some catch-up time because frequently one person's change makes the other person look at themselves and they do not love what they see. And maybe then they realize they drink too much, or in the case of depression, they realize that they're pretty depressed and the other guy was just, like if your husband's depressed and he's running around being angry and yelling, then you could be kind of quietly depressed as a woman and feel like you're all right, at least you don't yell at the kids. But if you're somebody who's really uncomfortable thinking that you're depressed, if he treats his depression and then he's kind of like a more laid back guy, you look at yourself, you're like, well, shit, now I'm the not fun parent because I'm depressed, but I kind of don't want to think that I'm depressed. And it's like this whole thing. As I frequently recommend movies and stuff, the movie When a Man Loves a Woman is a great movie about how one person stopping drinking can really stress a relationship. And it's the same, you could generalize from that to how one person engaging in any healthier behavior can really stress the relationship too. So hopefully this was useful. Substance use issues are very prevalent, and undiagnosed ones, the ones that are below the clinical level for like an abuse disorder or a dependence disorder, are obviously more frequent. And if you are in therapy or in couples counseling, you should definitely bring up how much you guys use substances, because frequently it just overlaps with the huge fights or the huge feelings of disconnect, and people don't want to interrogate the substance use, so then they let it go, and they kind of almost tacitly agree with one another not to bring up all the drinking and stuff because they don't want to be forced to change it. But the couples that do bring it up and work on it, it's super admirable, and they are like in 1,000 times a better place than couples who shove it under the rug. And I've seen this over and over in my practice. All right, hope you guys have a great day. Please do subscribe and follow me on all social media, even TikTok. I'll talk to y'all soon.